What if I told you that the headlines flashing across our screens right now about Israel-Iran war and upheaval are not random? What if they were written thousands of years ago, not in a modern newspaper, but in the ancient scrolls of prophecy? What if we are witnessing right now the unraveling of events foretold by the prophet Ezekiel? You see, we are living in the days the prophets longed to see. The Middle East is not just a hub of conflict. It is the epicenter of biblical destiny. What is happening today with Israel and Iran is no accident. It's not just geopolitical, it's prophetic. The prophecy found in Ezekiel chapters 38 and 39 presents one of the most specific and compelling visions of a future war involving Israel and a coalition of hostile nations. Among those ancient names is Persia, a kingdom that corresponds directly to modern-day Iran. What is striking is that this prophecy, written over 600 years ago, seems to unfold directly into today's headlines. The connection between Israel and Iran is not just political or military, it is prophetic. Ezekiel writes of a great confederation led by of the land of Magog, along with allies such as Persia, Cush, Put, Gomer, and Beth Togarmah. When mapped onto modern nations, this group represents a coalition involving Russia, Iran, Turkey, parts of North Africa, and other surrounding nations. It is not speculation, but rooted in well-established scholarship that has studied the identity of these ancient names. In the modern era, this coalition is not only plausible, it is already forming. Iran has become one of the most vocal and aggressive nations in the region, consistently threatening the existence of Israel. While this animosity has deep religious and ideological roots, it mirrors precisely what the Bible describes. The prophecy indicates that Persia will rise as one of the principal players in a future assault against Israel. And while many nations shift alliances and political interests with time, Iran's hostility toward Israel remains unchanging, almost as if is driven by something deeper than politics, something spiritual, something ancient. Iran funds terror groups such as Hezbollah in Lebanon, Islamic Jihad, and Hamas in Gaza, all with one primary objective: the destruction of Israel. But Iran is not acting alone. Over the past few years, it has strengthened military and economic ties with Russia and Turkey, two other nations commonly associated with Ezekiel's prophecy. Russia, with its increasing military presence in Syria, just north of Israel, finds itself positioned exactly where prophecy points. Iran's military footprint in Syria has also expanded dramatically, bringing it to Israel's very doorstep. And Turkey, though a member of NATO, has shown a clear pivot in its foreign policy, supporting Islamic coalitions and growing more adversarial toward Israel and the West. This prophetic alignment was unimaginable just a few decades ago. After World War II, Iran had relatively friendly relations with the West and with Israel. The Islamic Revolution of 1979 changed everything. Since then, Iran has declared the destruction of Israel as a national goal. They openly chant death to Israel and are actively pursuing nuclear weapons, not just for deterrence, but to fulfill what they see as a divine mandate. Ezekiel describes a coalition coming like a storm, invading the land of Israel in a sudden and massive assault. And this is not a vague metaphor. The description includes armies from multiple nations converging from the north, a geographic route that would pass directly through Syria. In the past, critics may have dismissed such prophecy as too far-fetched or irrelevant. But today, Israel stands alone in a region surrounded by hostile powers. It is no coincidence that those same powers are building alliances, conducting joint military exercises, sharing intelligence, and preparing for conflict. While the global media focuses on political maneuvering and nuclear talks, the spiritual dimension remains hidden in plain sight. The prophet Ezekiel saw what many cannot see now. He saw that Persia would one day join forces with other nations in an effort to destroy Israel. And he saw that this would happen after Israel had been regathered as a nation, a condition that was not true for over 2,000 years, but is now undeniably fulfilled in our time. Iran's rise in the modern era has just not been political or ideological. It has carried with it a deeply rooted prophetic significance. Among all the threats facing Israel today, Iran's growing aggression and pursuit of nuclear capabilities align most clearly with the ancient warnings given in the book of Ezekiel. In the prophecy, Persia is not just another name on a list of nations. It is a key component of the coming coalition that rises against the land of Israel in the latter days. Today, Iran does not hide its hatred toward Israel. It declares it from its platforms, imprints it on missiles, and weaves it into the foundation of its foreign policy. Iranian leaders have repeatedly stated their goal to wipe Israel off the map, to erase it from the region, and to do so by any means necessary. This is not ordinary political posturing. It is an ancient hatred reborn, one that matches precisely the tone and intent spoken of in biblical prophecy. For decades, Iran has been inching closer to acquiring nuclear weapons. Despite international sanctions, inspections, and negotiations, Iran has continued to enrich uranium, build missile capabilities, and fortify underground facilities designed to withstand preemptive strikes. The goal has never been mere national defense. Their regime believes it has a divine mission, one that includes the destruction of Israel. This is what makes the threat from Iran so unique and so aligned with the spiritual war described in Scripture. It is not just a geopolitical conflict, it is a theological one. Their leaders speak of ushering in the Mahdi, the Islamic Messiah, through global conflict, with Israel as the primary target in that end-time vision. Iran's proxies across the Middle East only serve to further reinforce this alignment with biblical prophecy. Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hamas and Islamic Jihad in Gaza, and the Houthis in Yemen all receive funding, weapons, and ideological support from Tehran. These groups do not merely act independently, they are extensions of Iran's strategic depth and spiritual warfare. Each attack against Israel by these groups is, in essence, an act of Iranian aggression, and as Iran encircles Israel through its allies and puppet groups, it mirrors the prophetic image of a coordinated, multi-front assault described by Ezekiel. Moreover, the timing of Iran's nuclear progress is not lost in the larger spiritual picture. Just as Israel has returned to the land and risen as a regional power, Iran has emerged as a counter-force, filled with enmity and empowered by alliances with other anti-Israel states. Iran's partnership with Russia, another player named in Ezekiel's prophecy, has deepened in recent years. Joint military drills, arms deals, and strategic cooperation have brought these nations into a tighter alignment than ever before. This growing cooperation underscores how the modern world is unknowingly assembling the very coalition that the Bible said would rise in the last days. What adds to the urgency of this prophetic moment is the global community's response. Many leaders in the West continue to view Iran's aggression through a political or diplomatic lens, missing entirely the spiritual force driving it. Talks of peace treaties and appeasement have not altered Iran's objectives. Instead, they have often bought time for the regime to further its plans. And as Israel grows more isolated in the international community, Iran becomes more emboldened. The world watches largely unaware while ancient prophecies unfold before their eyes. Ezekiel foresaw not only the rise of Persia, but its involvement in a coalition bent on Israel's destruction. He saw not just conflict, but the motive behind it, a motive rooted in defiance against the God of Israel. The modern Iranian regime, in its words and actions, fulfills the spirit of that prophecy with chilling precision. The pursuit of nuclear weapons is not about security. It is about judgment, domination, and fulfilling a dark vision cloaked in religious fervor. The targets are not just cities, but covenants. Not just people, but promises. And the force behind it is not merely national. It is spiritual. The rebirth of Israel in 1948 stands as one of the most significant fulfillments of biblical prophecy in modern times. For nearly 2,000 years, the Jewish people were scattered across the world, living in exile, persecuted, and without a homeland. Nations rose and fell, empires collapsed, borders changed, yet Israel remained absent from the map until a miracle occurred. Out of the ashes of the Holocaust, a nation was born in a single day, just as the prophet Isaiah foretold. The dry bones of Ezekiel's vision began to come together, bone to bone, sinew to sinew, until flesh was restored and life returned to what had been dead. This miraculous rebirth was not just a historical event. It was a prophetic milestone, a divine turning point that signaled the acceleration of the end, time's timeline. With Israel's return to the land, the stage was set for the unfolding of events that could not have taken place without this foundational moment. Many of the prophecies concerning the last days hinge on the existence of Israel as a nation. Without Israel, the prophecies of Ezekiel, Zechariah, Daniel, and Revelation could not come to pass. The temple cannot be rebuilt if there is no Jerusalem. The nations cannot surround Israel if there is no Israel. The armies of the earth cannot march against God's people if those people are not gathered again in their land. The rebirth of Israel was the trigger, the spark that reignited the prophetic clock. Since 1948, Israel has faced war after war, attack after attack, yet has not only survived but thrived. In 1967, during the Six-Day War, Israel regained control of Jerusalem, another key prophetic sign. Jerusalem, the city God declared as his own dwelling place, once again became the capital of the Jewish people. This, too, was not coincidence, but prophecy unfolding before the eyes of the world. And yet, much of the world remains blind to the significance. What appears as political drama is in fact spiritual revelation. The hand of God is moving behind the scenes, guiding history according to his word. The prophets spoke of a time when God would gather his people from the nations and bring them back into their own land. They would be surrounded by enemies, yet remain standing. They would be hated by the nations, yet preserved. They would be attacked, but not destroyed. All of this is happening now. Israel, though tiny in size, has become the focal point of global attention. Every peace treaty, every terrorist attack, every UN resolution. These are not isolated events, but pieces of a divine narrative that continues to unfold. The restoration of the land was just the beginning. The spiritual restoration is the next step. And just as the dry bones came together physically, the Spirit of God is preparing to breathe new life into the people of Israel. The rebirth of Israel is a declaration that God's promises never fail. It is a sign to the nations that he is not finished with his covenant. It is a warning to the enemies of God that their plans will not prevail. And it is a call to the church to awaken. Because if Israel is back in the land, if Jerusalem is once again under Jewish authority, if the nations are rising up as foretold, then the return of the Messiah is not far off. Prophecy is not dormant, it is alive. And Israel is the proof. The existence of the Jewish state is a miracle that defies all logic and stands as a testimony to the faithfulness of God. In the prophetic vision given to Ezekiel, the nations that come together against Israel in the latter days are not a random assortment, but a calculated coalition. Each ancient name listed in the prophecy corresponds to a modern power with a clear and growing antagonism toward Israel. The names Gog, Magog, Meshech, Tubal, Gomer, and Beth Togarmah are believed by many scholars to point toward regions in and around modern-day Russia and Turkey. Persia, clearly identified as modern Iran, is listed as one of the main players. The striking detail of this prophecy is how nations separated by culture, language, and geography would ultimately unite under a common cause to rise up against the land of Israel. What seemed improbable centuries ago is now not only plausible, but visible in real time as alliances solidify in ways that echo this ancient warning. In recent years, Russia has significantly expanded its presence in the Middle East, especially in Syria, which shares a border with Israel. Military bases, air power, and diplomatic leverage have all given Russia a dominant hand in the region. Simultaneously, Turkey, once a close ally of the West and even Israel, has undergone a dramatic transformation. Under new leadership, Turkey has shifted toward Islam nationalism and taken on a much more aggressive stance regarding its neighbors. It has openly opposed Israel's sovereignty in Jerusalem, criticized its military operations, and voiced support for Palestinian resistance. The Turkish leadership has even called for a pan-Islamic military force to confront Israel, a sentiment that resonates eerily with the prophetic vision of a coalition gathering for war. Iran, the modern Persia, has established itself as a central figure in this emerging axis. Its partnerships with both Russia and Turkey are growing through arms deals, strategic cooperation, and shared military interests. All three nations, Russia, Iran, and Turkey, have conducted joint military exercises and diplomatic summits focused on reshaping the balance of power in the Middle East. Though each nation has its own agenda, they are increasingly united by a common opposition to Israel and the Western influence that supports it. This convergence is not accidental. It follows the pattern laid out in Ezekiel's words, forming the precise structure of the coalition described in the prophetic vision. Libya and Sudan, also mentioned in Ezekiel's prophecy under ancient names of Put and Cush, have both experienced deep internal unrest, foreign influence, and military instability. These nations, once considered peripheral, have now become theaters of proxy warfare and battlegrounds for influence by larger powers. Their roles in the coming alignment are becoming more clear as regional instability allows for manipulation and alliance with larger anti-Israel powers. The idea that nations from North Africa, Eastern Europe, Central Asia, and the Middle East would unite in a single purpose may have seemed implausible in a previous generation, but today it is unfolding before our eyes. What makes this prophetic alignment so remarkable is not only the accuracy of the geographical correlations, but the motivations behind these alliances. Many of these nations are driven by ideologies that reject Israel's right to exist, that deny its historical connection to the land, and that see its growing power as a threat to their own agendas. This is not just political strategy, it is spiritual alignment. These powers are not converging merely for economic or military benefit. They are being drawn together by a deeper force, one that echoes the ancient rebellion against the purposes of God. The names may have changed, the languages may differ, but the spirit remains the same. The prophecy is not static, it is living, and the alliances forming in this generation are echoing the very coalition Ezekiel saw rising in the latter days. The prophetic events described in Ezekiel 38 and 39 are not just focused on military conflict or geopolitical shifts, they carry a spiritual purpose that transcends the battlefield. The shaking of the nations, the gathering of enemies, the trembling of the earth. These are not random acts of history, but divine movements with a specific intent. God declares in these chapters that he will bring the coalition of nations against Israel so that his name might be made known among the nations. What appears to be a threat against Israel is, in fact, a setup for the revelation of God's power and sovereignty. This is not merely about war, it is about glory. The surrounding of Israel by hostile nations is not the final act of destruction, but the stage upon which God reveals himself as holy, righteous, and faithful. Throughout the scriptures, God has used the conflict surrounding his people as a means to demonstrate his authority over the earth, from the parting of the Red Sea to the walls of Jericho falling, from the preservation of Israel in Babylon to the miraculous victories in modern wars. God has made it clear that he uses even the wrath of man to bring about his purposes. In the Ezekiel prophecy, the invasion by Magog and its allied nations is portrayed as something that God himself orchestrates, not to harm Israel, but to reveal his greatness to both Israel and the nations watching. He declares, "I will bring you against my land so that the nations may know me." This is the heart of the shaking, not simply to defend Israel, but to awaken the world. The war that is foretold is one that results in a divine intervention, unlike anything seen before. God says he will enter the battle himself. With earthquakes, fire, hailstones, and confusion among the invading armies, he will defend Israel in a way that leaves no doubt who the true deliverer is. The scale of the destruction is massive, but its purpose is redemptive. It is not simply to punish, but to reveal. When the world sees what God does in that moment, they will know that it was not the strength of Israel's army or the power of its technology, but the hand of the Almighty. The shaking is not limited to the battlefield. It will be global. The earth will quake, the mountains will fall, and the people of every nation will feel the weight of what is taking place. The fear of the Lord will return. In a world that has forgotten God, where sin is celebrated and truth is suppressed, the shaking will serve as a wake-up call. Many will be brought to repentance. Others will resist, but no one will remain neutral. The days of casual belief will come to an end. The time for choosing sides will be unmistakable. God will make himself known in the sight of the nations. For Israel, this shaking will also mark a turning point. The nation that was regathered physically in 1948 will begin to experience spiritual awakening. The veil that has covered their eyes for generations will begin to lift. The God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob will reveal himself anew. The prophecies of restoration will move from promise to fulfillment. The bones that came together in Ezekiel's vision will be filled with breath. The Spirit will be poured out, and Israel will know that the Lord is their God. This divine shaking is not punishment without purpose. It is the prelude to redemption. It is the beginning of something greater than war or politics. It is the hand of God writing his name into history once again. The nations rage, the kings plot, the enemies gather, but above it all, the Lord is moving. He is not silent. He is not distant. He is not indifferent. He is preparing to reveal his glory.